Welcome to Learn Fast with RK. In this session, let us learn about the functions with arguments and return values. Before we start learning, you must be familiar with some basic stuff like what is a function, what are different types of the functions, arguments, and return values. You can refer to my previous video for a detailed description by clicking into suggested link. I also made my demonstration on the functions with arguments but no return values in the video link flashed in the suggestion box. If you are not familiar or if you want to get detailed insights, please visit the link and come back. I will recap in brief to start learning functions with arguments and return values. A function is a set of statements to perform a specific task. In other words, it is a self-contained block of statements. It improves the modularity and readability and helps to reuse the code. It helps in reducing the errors, debugging time, and program development time. A function that invokes the function call is said to be as a calling function. Function to which the control will be transferred to during the function call is said to be as in called functions. The values that are passed from the calling function to called function are called as in parameters or arguments. The values which are returned from the called function back to the calling function are called as in return values. Now let us see the syntax of functions with arguments and return values. As I already mentioned, we need to remember three thumb rules. First one is a declaration, function call, and function definition. The declaration of the functions with arguments and return values is given below. Because we are having both arguments and return values, we need to mention specifically what is the type of the value that we want to return from called function to calling function in the declaration part. Next, we need to provide the function name, which is an identifier to address the block of the statements that we write for this function. And the next one is argument list type. The argument list type will specify what type of the arguments that we are passing. This functional declaration will direct the compiler and instructs it that in future what type of the functions are defined by the user. Next, let us see what is a function call. The function call is a very important statement that we write in any of the function because this will transfer the control from calling function to called function. The function which has this function call is said to be as a calling function. The function to which the control will be transferred during this function call is said to be as a called function. Now let us see what is the syntax of the function call. Since we are having the return value for this type of the functions, we need to store the return value in any one of the temporary variable or storage location. So we will provide the variable or storage location equal to the function name we need to provide, and then we need to pass the actual parameters or arguments. Here we need not to mention type of the parameters. It is always preferred that type of the parameters should match with the types that we used in the function declaration. There can be any number of the actual parameters, but number of the actual parameters should match with the number of the parameters that we declared or we defined. Let me explain you how to define a function with arguments and return values. We need to mention the return type, space, the function name, and here we need to mention the formal parameters within the parentheses. These formal parameters are the temporary variables or the dummy storage locations which will facilitate to store the arguments that are passed in the function call. These formal parameters are used in the function definition. Now opening bracket, and we need to mention what are all the statements that we want to perform, and then closing bracket. We should remember that these functions with return values should have compulsorily a return statement with the value that we want to pass. And you always remember that once the control reaches to the return statement, and if it executes this return statement, then the control will never go beyond this point. The statements written after return statement will never get executed, because the control will be now transferred back to the next statements of the calling function. Let me explain you with an example. The first example, find the square of a number using the functions with arguments and return values. Since we are choosing the type functions with arguments and return values, we need to pass the parameters from main function to sub function, as well as we need to get the resultant output from the sub function back to the main function. Here our sub function is which will calculate the square of the given number. So we are reading the value which we want to find out the square into x. We need to pass this x to our sub function as an argument. So let us define the sub function first. So the first one is the return type, space, the function name and the formal parameters, and within the block we need to write down the statement list, and since we are returning the value, we need to write down the return statement. So let us write down our return type. Since we are returning the value of the square of an integer, the integer or a long int, but let us consider it as an int, space, and the function name is square. Since we are passing this x to this square function, I am denoting in n. So this is the function definition for our square function. So what this square function has to do, it will obtain the value from the calling function to n. We need to square the value of n and we need to pass back to the calling function. So the value that we got from the calling function is stored in n. Now we need to square it, return of n star n. Normally we can also consider taking it into another variable, let us say int where sqr equal to n star n, and we can return the value sqr. This is one way of writing. Since we are not using this sqr variable again in this function, using this will not help anyway. So I am just putting it in comment and then I am just passing directly the value n star n. So this function is taking an integer argument from the calling function and storing it in n, and we are squaring the value and returning the value back to the calling function. So that is why we mention the return type int. We need to write down the declaration part. Return type space the function name and then argument list type. Since we are passing only one value and we are returning the integer, the return type will be int space and our function name square, and argument list we are having only one argument. Since we want to pass x as an argument, here we are mentioning int. The function definition and then function declaration will not execute the statements that we write in this function definition block. The only statement which will make the statements written in this function block get executed is the function call. Now let us another variable square and then here sqr equal to, let us see the declaration of the function call. Since we are using the functions with arguments and return values, our function will return a value. In order to store this return value, we need to use any variable or some storage location. Otherwise, we can directly print that value. Then we need to use the function name and then actual parameters. Let us write down one by one. So here I am taking the temporary variable I already declared sqr and then using it. So sqr equal to function name where it is expected to pass the value integer. Here in the description it is showing, right? So the value that we want to find out the square is stored in x. So I am just passing this x. We should clearly identify the difference. Here we need to mention only the data type of the value that we are passing. Here we need to mention only the value, not the data type. But in the formal parameter, we need to write down both the data type and then variable name. You may be surprised, how do I declare SPR variable both in main function as well as in square function? It can be done because this SQR is declared inside this function block. Any variable declared inside the function block is having only the scope within the function only. So outside this function, it is not known to any other function. So that is why you can use the same variable names in different modules. Now we call this function square and then we squared the number in the function and return back and stored it in SQR variable. Now let us print the value and then check. So printf %d comma sqr. Let us have a small diagnosis whether we write it correctly or not. So we had this function declaration part, function call, and then function definition. Yes, we have successfully wrote the code to find the square of the number using the functions with arguments and return values. Let us execute this code and check. Let us find out the square of 10. So now we got the value 100. That's it, guys. In this example, let us calculate the simple interest using the functions with arguments and return values. Let us get started. And for calculating the simple interest formula is given by SI equal to P into T into R by 100, where P is the principal amount, T is the time, and then R is the rate of interest. Now our program is expected to pass the P, T, R values to our simple interest function, and then it is expected to return the simple interest as an return value. Since P, T, R, P is the principal amount, which can be an integer value. So let us declare int P and then float T comma R. Let us take one variable SI here. Why we declared this SI variable? We want to store the value which we return from, which we get it from this simple interest function. Let us declare a variable float SI. This SI variable can be used to store the value which is returned from the simple interest function. Now let us write down the function definition. Our function definition, simple interest. Now since we are passing the principal amount in integer variable, so let us say P, float T, and then float R. We are passing 3 of the arguments. We are calculating this simple interest. I am declaring a variable float SI, and then I am just calculating the simple interest in this function as P star T star R by 100. Since this expression is having one of the float number, automatically this expression will be converted into the float type, and then the result will be stored in a floating number, and we need to return the value SI. So return of SI. Since we are returning this SI value, we need to mention the return type as float, since the SI is declared as in float. So from this function definition, we can write down the function declaration very easily. So you can simply copy this part and then paste here, and then just keep semicolon, remove this argument. That's it, guys. We completed the function declaration in an easy way. So this is one of the shortcuts that you can practice. Next thing is function call. The function call for simple interest is very easy. Syntax, we need to write down the variable name equal to the function name and then actual parameters. Since we are expecting to pass the parameters, we need to read those parameters, or otherwise we need to initialize. So I am just reading the values. Printf enter principal amount. So we read the values P, T, R here, and then we need to pass this P, T, R value to our simple interest function. So we need to write down simple interest of P comma T comma R. This P comma T comma R are actual parameters, and then these will be passed to our simple interest function, and then they are initialized to the values that we define in the function definition. You may be surprised that I use the same variable names in this function and then other function. Yes, I already told you that the variables which are declared inside any function only the scope within the function. So that is why this PTR which are declared inside this main function are not known to the PTR which are declared in this sub function. These functions will help in improving the variable namespace. I pass the values P comma T comma R to the simple interest, and here in the simple interest function I calculated the value of the simple interest is now returned back to the calling function. Since the simple interest function is returning a value, that too is float. As per our definition, we need to declare a temporary variable. I already declared a temporary variable si. Now I am using this si to store the value which is returned from the simple interest function. Let me just print the value. So printf %f, the simple interest is, that's it. Let us have a small diagnosis whether we completed this program properly or not. We have done, we read the values and then we want to pass this, so we wrote the declaration of this function call, and then function definition. Let us execute this code. Keep it in the comments. Let us execute the code and check. So it is showing an error that simple interest reference is not found, because here we made one mistake. We declared this function as an simple interest, but because of the spelling mistake we wrote just like this. I'm just saving this code and then compiling it again. Now I got that output. So I'm just entering the value 1000 at the rate of interest, say 18%, and then time period, let us say 3 years. So the simple interest calculated will be 540. That is how we write the functions with arguments to calculate the simple interest. Here, instead of the calculating and storing it in SI, we can simply put it in comment, and directly we can write down here also P star R by 100, which let us see whether it is executed or not. It get executed. Let us give the same inputs, 1000, 18, and then 3 years. We got the same result. So that is how. Let us simply remove this and then check what will happen. So 1000, 18, and then 3. Now the simple interest is displayed as 0 because the value which is calculated in the simple interest is returned, but we are not storing the value into any of the variable, but we are displaying that simple interest here. So that is the reason it is displaying 0. So you should always remember that when we are having the return statement and then we are passing any return value from the subfunction, then we need to store it in any variable. We can also remove this entire thing from here, and then we can simply place it over here, and then I am just removing this simple interest declaration also. Let me execute this code. So 1000, 18, and then 3. That's it, guys. We got that output. So you can either store the return value in any one of the variable and use that variable for that for any purpose. Otherwise, you can also directly print the value, because the value, that is the printf statement, first evaluates the right side expression, and the value obtained in the right side expression will be stored in the format specifier. Since we are returning one value, that will be stored in %f. Let us say this value is a %.2f. Okay, let us execute this code and check. 1000, 18, and then 3. Previously we got 6 digits after the decimal. Now since we wrote the .2f, which does mean that the values after the decimal are limited only for 2 decimal points. This is the example of calculating the simple interest using the functions with arguments and return values. Hey guys, in this example, let us learn how to convert centigrade to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to centigrade as well using functions. You give centigrade, it will convert that to Fahrenheit. You give Fahrenheit, it will convert into centigrade. Let us write that sort of the functions in this example. Are you ready? Let's get started. First of all, what is the formula for converting the centigrade to Fahrenheit? If you give the centigrade value, then you will multiply with 9 by 5. And then add that to 32. That's it, guys. It will convert centigrade to Fahrenheit. Now to convert this Fahrenheit to centigrade, first subtract 32 and then multiply with 5 by 9. Let us start writing this program. Let's put it in comments. So this will come under functions with argument and return value type. Why? Because For that function we are passing the centigrade value, and then in return it will give us the Fahrenheit equivalent of the centigrade value. For writing this sort of the functions with arguments and return values, we need to remember 3 thumb rules: declaration, definition, function call. First, the centigrade as well as an Fahrenheit will be in the form of the decimal numbers. The best fit data type for these decimal numbers would be the floating point of the number. So I am declaring that floating point number float c comma f. Variable declaration is over now. Now what I need to do, I need to read the value of the centigrade, which I want to convert that into Fahrenheit. So then that's it guys. These 2 statements will help us to read the temperature in the form of the centigrade and get stored into C. So we need to define our own function, which is a user defined function, which you will never get it in our either stdio.h, conio.h, any of the header file guys. We need to write down our own user defined function, which will take temperature in centigrade as argument and then process that and gives Fahrenheit as an output back, is a return type, and then our function name cent2f, that means centigrade to Fahrenheit in short, which will take an argument and here centigrade, right? That's it. Now we are assuming we are just creating one dummy variable guys. Here C is a dummy variable, or you call it as a formal parameter. Whenever you call this function, that will get stored in this empty location. So you pass any value to this function, that will get stored in C. Now we are assuming the value that passed to the C2F will now available in the C variable guys. We need to convert this C variable to Fahrenheit. If you want to convert this C variable C to Fahrenheit, so this is the formula guys to convert the centigrade to Fahrenheit. The centigrade is multiplied by the 9 by 5.0. Why this 5.0? Because if you give the 9 by 5, then it is treated as an integer division and then decimal value will be truncated, but we want the decimal part too. Either you can go for the conversion of the whole number into floating point, otherwise you can simply make any one of the number as a floating value. So here I just made the 5 as an 5.0, which is a floating point number. Then the resultant value is now added to the 32. So this is a very simple formula guys, which will convert the centigrade to Fahrenheit. We need to return the value that we obtained. The value we calculated is now got stored in F, and then we will simply return that F. So in order to pass value back, then we need to use the statement called as a return of F. That is as simple as that guys. I already told you the simplest way to write down the declaration. Copy this first line and then paste it over here. As simple as that. Now remove that variable, put a semicolon. That's it guys. Return type space function name argument list type. So it will match with our syntax. Then we need to write down the function call. If you want to write down the function call, then what you need to do, you have to use any variable name equal to. Why we need to give this variable name stuff? Because our function is returning a value which is a Fahrenheit conversion of your centigrade value. So I am just using this F to store the value which is written by this C2F function. C2F is a function name, and then argument that we pass, the value that we input is stored in C. Now we are passing this C value and then passing that to the C2F function. That's it guys. Now we have successfully done the first job. What we have done, the temperature in the form of the centigrade, and this centigrade value is now passed to the C2F function, and the value that you pass, C here is an actual parameter, and this will be initialized to the formal parameter C. So the value that you read from the input will be now transferred to the variable C, and then here this formula calculation is done, and then the value will be converted into Fahrenheit, and then that will be returned. The value that you return will now get stored in this F. Let me make you clear guys. The C here in the main function is not the same as the C here in the C2F function. The F you declare in the C2F function is not the same as an F that you declare in this main function. If you are having any confusion, you can change that variable names. That won't make any difference guys. Before you execute this program, first of all let me print what is the value that we are returning. So print a %F Fahrenheit. equal to this value. This is only for the display purpose, guys. Though you don't write down anything, then that is fine. Backslash n, and then at the end we need to write down. That's all, guys. We need to pass the two values here. First value is a C and then second value is a F. Let us execute again. 100. That's it, guys. Now we got that answer. 100 is now converted into 212. So you can verify that using the simple calculator. I am using the calculator for your easy understanding, guys. 100 multiplied by, we need to give 9 by 5, and now we need to add 32. That's it, guys. So the result is 212 and we got this 212 value. So that is how we convert. You can make use of this function any number of times, guys. Anywhere you can make use of this function. So that is the simplicity. In the same way, why don't we write down the function which will convert Fahrenheit to centigrade? So let us write down one more function. Let's go with the function definition first. F2C, and then which will take the Fahrenheit, right? Float Fahrenheit as an argument, and it will return a centigrade as an return value. F is on Fahrenheit as a float value. Will now the conversion will also be in the floating value. So I am just mentioning the return type as float. Whatever the value passed to this function will be stored in the formal parameter F, because the formal parameters initial values are always the actual parameters. Now let us simplify this task. I am directly writing down the formula F minus 32 multiplied by 5 by 9 this time. So I am just using parentheses for a simple conversion. So I wrote this function definition as I already told you in an easy way how you can write on the declaration. Control C and then place over here, Control V, remove this argument list, put a semicolon, as simple as that. If you know the function definition, writing the function declaration would be very easy for you. Let us write on the function call. So already the value that you obtained in the Fahrenheit, let us try to pass the same value to check whether our C2F is working properly or not. Calling this F2C function and passing the value F that I just obtained. Now whatever the value that you got it from this function, you need to store it in one of the temporary variable. I am just using this C variable to store the value which is written from this F2C function. Making use of the same printf statement here for our understanding purpose. Let us execute this code. That's it, guys. Very easy. So 55 is converted into Fahrenheit and then it returned the value 131 back to the main function, and this 131 is now I am just transfer as an argument to the F2C function, and then it is calculating the centigrade equivalent to this 131 and then it is returning the centigrade equivalent of this 131 back to the main function. The value that I got from the function is 55, as simple as that. Now you can easily understand whether our program is working properly or not. Oh, we pass the value 55, converted into 131, again pass this 131 of the Fahrenheit and then converted back into 55, which is a perfect right answer. So that's it, guys. So this is how we can write down our own user defined function C2F and then F2C. I hope now you understand how to write functions with arguments and return values. Now it is the time for the assignment. In this assignment, you need to submit two programs. The first program is to check whether the given number is prime or not. Write down the C program using the functions with the arguments and return values. I just wanted to share you some of the hints that you can do. First, you need to read the number in main function, pass that to prime check function, write logic to check whether the given number is a prime or not in the prime check function, and return 1 if the given number is prime, otherwise 0. Store the returned value in a variable and write the condition to check for the returned value 0 or 1 and display the corresponding message in main function. These are only the hints you can write as per your requirement, but our ultimate objective is to use the functions with arguments and return values and check whether the given number is a prime or not. Similarly, I am also giving you one more program which is to find the biggest among two numbers. So we need to read the two numbers in the main function and pass these two numbers to our max function, check for the maximum in the function and return the maximum value from the function, store the returned value in a variable and display that variable as maximum of 2. If you are familiar with that, you can skip the hints and then you can directly write according to your own program. If you could able to solve this program, you can add your code in the comment section, or you can also post your code in the blog, which is shown in the description section given below. Have a good day. Please find the code used for the demonstration in the description section given below. Thank you. If you like this video, please like, share. Don't miss any updates from this channel. Click on the bell button and subscribe now.